so I had some extra time today. My partner just had hip surgery recently and can't drive herself anywhere. Is on her right side, and you need your right foot to drive most of the time. So I'm kind of her chauffeur over the next couple of weeks. And rather than just kind of sit in the back of the studio, listen to music on my own, read a book, whatever, do something productive, I decided I'd do just a little bit of, I don't know, not really promo, but just get to know the band members a little bit more. So for those of you, any new fans or longtime fans who maybe just don't interact with me that much, I'm Sean. I'm one of the guitarists of No This Is Patrick. And I'm here in my Honda Fit, just parked on the streets of East Nashville. And I have a buttload of CDs here. So I'm a physical media collector. Here's my little CD binder. I don't know, this is a pretty terrible angle, but you can see it's fairly thick. It's got a bunch of pages in here. And I also have an annex. I have a little tiny guy as well because I ran out of room. So I love physical media, Blu-ray, vinyl, CDs, what have you. It's partially for quality reasons. Just, CD quality is better than you're going to get on most standard tier streaming services. Of course, there's stuff like Tidal and Amazon and Apple have lossless stuff now, so that's great, and that's a big win for the industry. But it's albums get pulled off of streaming services, movies get pulled off streaming services all the time. So I really try to collect it physically if it's someone that I really care about and content that I really enjoy or care about. Now that said, a bunch of these CDs that I have here in my car are like from my childhood. Like, I've got some movie soundtracks, I've got some actual like band CDs that I'm super into, I've got some compilation CDs that maybe I was gifted for Christmas 18 years ago. Like, you really just never know what you're gonna find. And so the last couple of car trips that my partner and I have taken, I've just tasked her with putting in a random CD rather than futzing with Spotify. Like, usually when I'm in my car and I'm driving around, it's just Spotify on shuffle, or something will trigger an album that, like, oh, let's go put on that album front to back. But most of the time it's just shuffle. When you're in my car, it's just shuffling all my liked songs on Spotify. So anyway, we've been doing random CDs, and that's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of blast from the past kind of stuff, and just stuff that I don't really go out of my way to listen to all that much. So I just thought today I'd do a little bit of content here and go through some CDs, maybe talk about what they mean to me, or if not that specific CD, maybe the genre, maybe the album, maybe the artist, what have you. So here we go. On our way over here this morning, I'm starting with the one that's already in there because it was a random pick on our way over to the studio here this morning. So this is actually, I know what it's going to be ahead of time, so I can do a little bit of a preface. This is going to be a demo EP from a British prog metal band called Haken, and those of you who know me or know other band members know that Haken is up there in terms of our current favorite artists. They're very progressive, definitely metal, but they're right on the line sometimes. Like, they're also very whimsical and have kind of like carnival sounding portions. So anyway, I'm gonna get the music going in the background. No idea how the audio levels are gonna be. This is my first time filming this, and it's all live and it's all in the room, and I'm not doing any like post-production or anything. So we'll see how loud it is or isn't, and we'll see, maybe the video is gonna be muted for copyright stuff. You just don't ever know. It's a surprise here. So here we go. So this is the first track on their EP. And the fun thing about this EP is that they actually ended up re-recording and rearranging a couple of the tracks from it, and they put that out 2014, maybe 2015 at the latest, and that was the I'm blanking on the Restoration EP. So it was really cool. So this was the first thing, and I mean, right off the bat you hear this death growl. Hopefully you hear it. They don't really do that much anymore. They did that a little bit on this and a little bit on their first album, so it's an extra little treat when you go into a band's history and you get a glimpse into some of the technique that they're not using anymore, that they just either naturally or intentionally kind of got away from. So I don't remember what this track is called on this demo because they changed up some of the titles a little bit too, but it's called Darkest Light on the Restoration EP, re-recorded, rearranged version. It's pretty similar overall. The structure is definitely different. They streamlined it for the re-recording, which I think a lot of fans appreciated, and it's always a little bit divisive when you're re-releasing something you've already done, and some of the fans are really attached to the older version, and I'd consider myself probably about 50-50, honestly. Like, I don't know how long I'm gonna let each track play, just because some of them are a bit longer, and I want to make sure I get through a couple of songs at a time. But this version has a lot of sort of carnival, like an interlude, an actual interlude that's sort of carnival based. So I like that sort of silliness and whimsical aspect. That's actually kind of what got me into Haken. It was their video for the Cockroach King, which is several albums past this material here, but it was the video. Number one was a bunch of puppets that the guitarist Charlie actually made. So it was puppets that looked like the band members, and we actually sort of paid homage to that in Patrick's first music video, which is for Where's the Giant Mansley. Matt, our guitarist, did an excellent job recreating the band members as puppets just from like craft store stuff, like styrofoam heads and cardboard to make each of our like the guitars we used the most at that time. Like he used his, we were both kind of using our DeLong Strats. His is a Fender and mine's a Squier, so he kind of made each of those, and you can see that in the video. Anyway, that's really cool. Coming up here, I'm going to turn up the track just for a sec. You'll get one of these carnival sections I was talking about. It's like an oompa, like you're going around a carousel, and you know, you just don't get that a lot. You don't get this kind of whimsy in a lot of pop music or even rock music. You know, a lot of it takes itself pretty seriously. So that's one thing I always appreciate about Haken, is the times that they don't take themselves too seriously are what ended up attracting me and a lot of other fans to them. So, and that's not at all to downplay their virtuosity. I mean, every single person in this band is a master of their instrument. It's incredible. It's absolutely nonsense to see them up on stage live. Just guitar, drums, bass, keys, vocals, all just perfectly locked in. Every member of the band can sing harmonies, like, you know, so you can get 5 or 6 part harmonies on a lot of stuff. Again, my favorite band of all time is Queen, so anything where you can layer those vocal harmonies in there. And on one of the other tracks on this version and on the re-recorded Restoration EP, the track Crystallized has a section in the middle that's like an a cappella section for a little bit. And I mean, seeing them recreate that live is just amazing. It's so sweet to have that many different voices on stage. Again, just something you don't get that often in pop or rock music. Usually it's the main singer, a backup singer, maybe a third backup singer if you're really lucky. But anyway. Alright, so that's telling me we've been about 4 minutes in this track, so we'll just see what we got next. So we'll spit this one out. I'll set that aside. I'm not even looking. Look, I'm making eye contact with the camera. I'm just opening up, fumbling around to a random page in my CD booklet here. I've grabbed a disc and making sure it's right side up very briefly and popping that into the CD changer. So let's see what we got. Starting off very quiet, apparently. I don't know if you can hear, there's some like thunder and rain sound effects. I think this is Extreme 2. This is probably Decadence Dance. Yeah, and there's that piano intro, classic. So this is a great one. I'm getting a good pull today. So this is the late 80s, early 90s hair, glam, funk metal band Extreme. If you know them, you probably know More Than Words, which was a ballad, just guitar and acoustic guitar and vocals. And No, This Is Patrick actually covered that in a pop punk style on our first album, so go check that out. I promise this wasn't even intentional. But anyway, so this is probably my favorite Extreme album. They've got 4 or 5 by now. Really like late 80s, early 90s, they churned out 3 in pretty quick succession that just all were top notch. Just the first one, you know, coming right out, but they were a little bit later in the 80s, so that was kind of the bummer, is like they missed the big wave and never really got as big as I felt they deserved for their relative skill level. Like it you know, it's all subjective, of course, but I would put them right up there side by side, and honestly sometimes I prefer Extreme with like Van Halen. So I mean, you don't get much bigger than 80s glam hair heavy metal than Van Halen, right? You know, he's just for any number of reasons, the vocals, the drums, the guitar playing, the shredding, obviously. So Nuno Bettencourt of Extreme, I would say, is right up there. Again, he's a little bit later, so the argument is that since Van Halen did it first, my dash cam just popped off my windshield. The heat makes the stickiness lose effectiveness. Anyway, so, you know, of course the argument is Van Halen came first, so therefore they influenced Extreme, so therefore Extreme isn't as good by default. You know, whatever, you can argue that either way. I'll maybe talk a little bit less just while I crank this. It's just such a good groove. Every song on this album is such a good groove. Just this Nuno's riff. It just makes you, it just engages you. It's not in the background, it's also like, it's trading off with the lead vocals, at least right now, of just like constantly focusing your attention. It's so tight. Oh man. Again, just so much movement. It's not just chords, it's not just chugging, it's Nuno just singing on his guitar, you know, it's just so sweet. And then into the chorus, here we go. Again, kind of switching off between the chants, the shouting, dance, and Nuno, sliding up to that. Oh, it's so good. We got a verse 2. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit, see if we can get to the solo. Second chorus. Should be coming up on the bridge and then the solo. Again, sort of this interlude of just the switching up just a little bit, just a little noodle, you know? Some more noodle. Just halftime it, right, just settle back right into this groove. And then here's Nuno. Very almost classical, and I love that about him. It's so melodic. Very Brian May influenced. He's got that Floyd Rose on there, so he's just dive bombing all the time. Pinch harmonics, oh, it's so sexy. Here we go, bringing it all back around for another chorus. Good stuff. So yeah, check out Extreme 2 for sure. It is rip-roaring front to back, a funky good time. The 80s are in peak effect. There's a lot of sexual innuendos on there, both in the song titles, the concept of the album overall, and just the lyrics. And just Extreme was always like, again, they don't put that in their back pockets. That's part of the genre, baby. That's the 80s for you. So anyway, that was a good pick. Glad that one came up. All right, again, opening my CDs, randomly grabbing one out, not looking at the top, sliding it right in. Let's see what we got. Got some chugging. I actually don't even know what this is off the top of my head, which is probably going to be embarrassing in a minute. We'll find out. Sounds like some good pop punk though. Or maybe it is just someone that I shouldn't know off the top of my head, and I'll get to talk about some music that I'm discovering. Oh, this has some CD text, so I can cycle through it. Oh, it's some all-time low here. So if I had to guess, maybe a Hopeless Records sampler. I picked up one of those a while back, and I know that had an all-time low track on there. Could also be a Warped Tour sampler. Anyway, good stuff. So All Time Low is one of those bands that definitely influenced us a lot as a band. Coincidentally, they're one of those bands that I don't really know all that well, to be perfectly honest. They weren't part of my pop punk core coming up, but they were a huge part of Matt's coming up, so you're going to hear a lot of their influence on our tracks. I really got the most into their track Weightless, which is just a top-notch pop punk, you know, up-tempo jam. So that would be the track that I'd recommend to go check out if you're not very familiar with them. But yeah, especially their earlier stuff is some good stuff. Let's see if I can confirm what this is based on what it goes to next. go, some classic of Mice and Men. So this is probably a Warped Tour sampler if I had to guess. I can talk about Warped Tour, yeah, I mean, good grief. Didn't actually go to that many as a teenager. The first one I went to was post-graduation, my senior year of high school, so that's really, I lived in, I grew up, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, so that's where I went to high school. Honestly, not a ton of musical opportunities in Eau Claire in terms of hardcore and punk. There was some like stuff that would go on at Molten's or Skate America or whatever it was at the time. They'd have like throwdown nights every now and then. So we would get some of the local like hardcore, metalcore, punk kind of stuff, but it wasn't of Mice and Men coming through Eau Claire. The closest they were going to come was going to be Chicago, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, something like that. So honestly didn't get out that much. But then Warped Tour, that came through that came through Shakopee, Minnesota. So that was roughly the Twin Cities area, about an hour and a half away from my town. So my girlfriend at the time and I were into a lot of the same kind of scene music, anything that would have been on Warped Tour. So we were like, yeah, it'd be fun to go and whatever. So we planned for it. We got tickets. Between when we got tickets and when the show was, we actually broke up. It was not really mutual. It was, unfortunately, I was the dumpy in that situation. But both of us still really wanted to go to Warped Tour. She didn't have a car at the time, and I was enough of a nice guy to be like, yeah, we'll still go. Like, we planned on going. You really want to go. And actually, her younger sister really wanted to go too. So I was like, I'm not gonna ditch you guys and pull the rug out from under Warped Tour, so we'll all still just go, it'll be fine, whatever. And really it was fine. I mean, it wasn't like we didn't get in a big breakup fight or anything, at least not at the time. I kind of resented it later, but that's my own problems. But just, it was perfectly fine and friendly, and it was a great fucking time. I mean, any Warped Tour date is gonna be the hottest date on the face of the earth, no matter what city you're in. No matter what time of year it is, it just doesn't matter. It's going to be over 100 degrees. You're going to get sunburnt. A couple years later, I wore a Hawaiian shirt with my buddy Matt to one here in Nashville, and I got a nice deep V, just absolutely destroyed my chest. But anyway, that Shakopee, Minnesota show introduced me to a lot of great bands. And because again, I was somewhat of not a sheltered high school kid, but I just kind of liked what I liked and didn't have any great ways of discovering music. All my friends were kind of into the similar stuff, so you could pick up these samplers. Like, this is a Warped Tour sampler from whatever year this would have been, maybe 09. And I might have even screwed up the year earlier. I don't know if I mentioned the year, but that would have been around 2011 that I actually went to Warped Tour. But so this sampler is probably from like 09 or something like that, or maybe it's from 11 actually. All of that's irrelevant. The whole point of me saying that is just you could pick up these samplers at like Target and stuff for a couple dollars, like $1 to $5 for 2 discs sometimes of just grade A music if you're into that. If you're into the Hot Topic scene, anything that's metalcore, screamo, hardcore, anything that's tangentially related to that. You'd get Rise Against, you'd get Bless the Fall here, you'd get All Time Low, you'd get Of Mice and Men, It's just real good for a kid coming up in the scene to be able to pick up this CD and get so many bands just instantly, to be like, here's 20, 40 bands that you might not even have heard of that you might be super into. Memphis Mayfire. So one last memory, and then I'll go to the next random CD here. Shakopee, Minnesota, Warped Tour. So 2011, just graduated high school. I don't know how the circumstances happened, but a much smaller band got on the main stage, and that band's name was Larry and His Flask. And I don't know if we had just gotten there or something. We had just seen somebody at another stage and needed to go hit up the water station. So we walk up this big hill to the water station, got a pretty good view of the layout from up there, and a really good view of the main stage. You could definitely see what was going on the main stage. And it's like kind of bluegrass, kind of folk punk, but it's an upright bass, it's a banjo, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, mandolin, and just like a standing drum kit. So he's got a kick drum and a snare and maybe a floor tom and then like some cymbals, but he's standing playing it, So it's less about the technicality of it, and it's more about the energy. And I mean, man, this guy's throwing his upright bass all over the stage. At one point, they swap out and they do kind of an interlude where he picks up a sousaphone, mandolin picks up a trumpet, and banjo picks up a trombone. Like, just all flawlessly mid-song, and it just knocked my socks right off. So again, Larry and His Flask, check them out. I bought their debut album the very next day when I got home. It's called All That We Know. Top notch front to back. Can't recommend it enough. All right, thank you, Memphis May Fire. Let's see what we got next. Oh, here, I'll see. This is Warped Tour 2012, Disc 2 is what that one ended up being. But a lot of those bands were on the tour for multiple years at a time, so it's hard to pinpoint it just from who's on the CD, you know. All right, let's see. What do we got next? This will probably be the last one. I'm going about 20 minutes here. Smooth, whatever it is. Do I have any album text? Oh, the Broomsticks. Okay. The Broomsticks. How did I get a Broomstick CD? I think they might have... Okay, so my senior year of college... Hold on, let me get you... I'll let you hear you kick... Let you hear this kick in here. Go. Classic, just a funky bass groove. Some drums.
First time you passed me by, I thought that I was gonna die. I thought I knew how to love, but
oh yeah, that's some baby making music right there. So anyway, the Broomsticks. So 2015, my senior year of college. It wasn't required for graduation, but it was strongly encouraged that you get an internship of some kind in the field. I was a music business major at Belmont, so you know, I want something in the music business. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. For a long time, I was considering maybe like a talent agent, something with A&R, something that basically allowed me to help smaller bands get the recognition they deserve. So that if that was going out to clubs and then bringing bands sort of back to the label, if that was putting on shows, if that was promoting shows, if that was running like live sound, you know, audio post-production stuff, mixing, mastering, whatever. Like, I was just so all over the place, and I didn't quite have enough experience yet to really figure that out. So I happened across a Facebook post at the perfect time for a company called Music City Roots. They were down in Franklin, Tennessee at the time, just a little bit south of Nashville, at a location called The Factory. Really sweet, large event space. And basically what it was it took, you know, the spirit and style sort of the Grand Ole Opry. So it was a variety show. It could be full band, it could be singer-songwriter, it could be an established artist, it could be a brand new artist. But really the whole gist of it was, number one, getting artists of all talent levels the recognition they deserve. Anything from Americana, folk, bluegrass, country, even to like hard rock, southern rock, garage rock, just really anything in that under that sort of umbrella that the talent buyer wanted to hear. And that was my former boss, AJ, who did a great job and is still continuing the show. They've got a new home in Madison, Tennessee. Check it out. But anyway, so the Broomsticks were on their show one of the days, and one of my tasks as the intern was to do merch sales during the show. So sometimes that would just be from Music City Roots. Sometimes that would be sort of adjacent with the artists if they didn't have anyone to sell it while they were on stage. Again, a lot of them are smaller bands. They don't have a merch person, so I was happy to do that. And I ended up picking up a lot of good music, buying a lot of good music from those guys that would come through, because it was every Wednesday, I think. And so I was there every Wednesday, and I knew it was going to be 4 or 5 stellar bands. You know, I hadn't heard of most of them, and I didn't need to, because that was the whole point of the show, is that you would go and you would just know that it's going to be a great night of music. And again, relative to other shows around Nashville, super cheap. It was, I don't know, $10, $20. Back in the day, it might be a little bit more now with just time and inflation. You know, we're almost a decade past, but man, I mean, I wouldn't trade that for the world. And, you know, got me some great experience too of figuring out what I did and didn't want to do. Like, day of show operations, for sure, that'd be great. Live show, nope, I actually want to pass on that. That's too stressful. But I could be the talent buyer, I could be the event coordinator, I could be, you know, hospitality, making sure the bands have everything they need, answering any questions they have. So that was a really great internship that I'm really thankful for. So thanks, you know, Zach and AJ and John and Todd, everybody at Music City Roots. Thanks for giving me that introduction sort of to the real world of the music industry, seeing that. one other thing I want to mention lastly about Music City Roots being awesome is just, you know, the money from, they made all, the show ran on sponsorships basically, again, at least back in the day when I was there, and all of the ticket money, all of the actual admission money got an even split between all the bands. So again, you know, practice what you preach, and Music City Roots certainly was doing that. You know, great music, giving smaller bands the platform, and actually paying the bands. Because, you know, again, this is, I'll leave you with this kind of a bummer note, but a lot of bands in Nashville aren't making squat, guys. Like, I can count on one hand. Hey guys, so there's going to be an obvious cut and probably a volume difference, and you might hear my AC roaring in the background. That's because my previous take just stopped filming because my phone got way too hot, because it's way too hot in Nashville, and even inside of my air-conditioned car, that's still too hot for my phone sometimes. So all I was saying is that bands in Nashville probably not making very much money. Now that the bands on Broadway, if they're working on tips, making hundreds of dollars a night off of drunk tourists, they're making money. Established bands coming through, they're making money. But I'm talking mostly at like the smaller local level, obviously, like we're at right now. You got 3 or 4 local-ish bands and another local-ish band coming through that's like the headliner that's on tour. You know, maybe they're from Florida, Georgia, Carolinas, something, swinging through Nashville. Really, nobody's making any money just other than what you sell, what you sell yourself on merch. So we've done our best shows out of town, Memphis, Knoxville, Chattanooga. Made way more money off of the merch sales than all of our any prior show sales combined in terms of like tickets. So anyway, support local bands, go to stuff like Music City Roots if you have something. If you're local in Nashville, go check it out. Buy the merch of the bands that you're going to see. That is the best way that you can support them, full stop. Buy their merch, give them a follow on Spotify, and spread the gospel. Really, it's word of mouth too that does the most. If one of my friends comes to me with a band and says check it out, that means infinitely more than any algorithm, any streaming service, you know, recommending, hey, you might like this. That's disposable. That doesn't mean as much. So anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. It might be a little bit lengthy. My plan is to keep doing them as long as I have this time. So yeah, stay well out there. Appreciate local music. Take care, guys.
I was waiting for a masterpiece to save me, when all along I was the masterpiece I saw.